Welcome to This Naked Mind Alcohol Exposed with Annie Grace. And today I'm going to talk about something that is shockingly underknown in our society. And this is the concept of spontaneous sobriety. And spontaneous sobriety just simply means sobriety that's achieved without any treatment whatsoever. No expensive rehab. I know somebody who paid 15 grand to go to rehab, didn't work. No expensive hypnosis. I know somebody who paid 7 grand for hypnosis, didn't work. No meetings, no structured rehab, just becoming sober. So how does this happen, and how can we replicate it, and why doesn't anybody talk about it? But I'm going to read this quote to make sure I get it right. But according to a recent survey by the NIAAA, more than 1/3 or 35.9% of individuals with alcohol dependence fully recovered without any treatment. Now, in comparison to a peer-reviewed study done by the professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, they pegged the success of AA somewhere between 5 and 10%. So 1 out of every 15 people who enters AA is able to stay and become sober. So on one hand, we've got AA, which is our best known, most successful per society's norm program for treating alcoholism, and then we've got spontaneous sobriety, which nobody knows about, and we've got a 5 to 10% success rate, and we've got a 35% success rate. So what is this? What is spontaneous sobriety, and how come nobody is talking about it? And I think that spontaneous sobriety, it is the decision with all of your mind and all of your soul that you want to make a change. And I think once that decision, and this is what AA does, this is what every treatment program does, is it leads you down that path of making that decision, making that one single decision to make a change. Now, we've talked in other episodes about the fact that a single decision, no matter if it's a really tough decision, like giving up the booze for good, or whether it's a relatively simple decision, should I have this next beer, a decision's a decision, and there comes almost the same amount of internal kind of turmoil and effort with a decision. So you have to weigh your options, you have to think about the repercussions of each, you have to really give some thought to that decision. And if you're making 1,000 decisions to try and drink less, you're spending thousands of times the effort of making one firm decision. So how do you get to this point where you can make this one decision and really achieve this spontaneous sobriety? I think it happens different for all of these people, these 35.6% of problem drinkers. And these are problem drinkers. These are people who have experienced one or more of the following symptoms, making bad decisions that are impacting themselves and others, and drinking anyways, experiencing heavy tolerance or physical dependence. So this isn't just, your average drinker, if there is such a thing, but that's another episode. But these are problem drinkers who are achieving spontaneous sobriety. So how does this happen? And my theory is that, one of the things that happens inside you when you are addicted to something is 2 conflicting points of view spring up. So I'll give you an example. I have a really good friend, and she is now very happily married, but she went through this long line of suitors. And there was one guy in particular, none of them were good enough for her, but that's a friend talking. But there was one guy in particular, this guy just rubbed me the wrong way. And for some reason, she really liked him, and I could not get on sides with this boyfriend. And so no matter what, I couldn't change my point of view about this guy, and she couldn't change how much she liked him. And so there was this division between us that we couldn't easily resolve. It wasn't resolvable. She wasn't going to go break up with this guy because of her friend's opinion, and I, no matter what I did, couldn't force myself to like him. So it created a conflict between us. And a conflict is painful. Humans, we're averse to conflict. I mean, even if you just witness conflict, if you see someone arguing on the street, it doesn't feel nice. And so we try to avoid conflict. And when you've been drinking and you've been thinking that alcohol does all these great things for you, relieves stress, reduces anxiety, really enhances social situations, helps you have better sex. There's an episode on that. When you do all these things, you believe that alcohol is doing something for you. And you believe that both implicitly and explicitly. So implicitly and explicitly are pretty much consciously and unconsciously. So you believe it consciously, and you also believe it unconsciously. And then something happens when you decide that you want to drink less, and you decide that alcohol isn't doing you all the favors. So for me, I was like, okay, I'm starting to get hangovers. This sucks. I don't want to be doing this. And I decided, okay, well, I'm just going to start drinking less. Not so easy. Not so easy. And if you've never decided to try to drink less, then you might not know what I'm talking about, but if you had, you will know it's not so easy to just try and drink less. And I believe that it's because of this internal conflict, because suddenly I had this conscious desire to moderate or to drink less, but I still had this big, overwhelming, unconscious desire to drink. I had this belief that alcohol was key to my enjoyment of life. It was key to my reducing my stress. It was key to unwinding after a day of work. It was key to camping. It was key to so many things that I did and I enjoyed doing. So having two opposing beliefs inside your head at the same time that you cannot easily reconcile, it's called cognitive dissonance. And I believe that cognitive dissonance is really the basis of the pain in addiction. Because imagine if it's difficult to see somebody disagreeing with someone on the bus, how much more difficult is it to disagree with yourself inside your heart? And so I think spontaneous sobriety is achieved when somebody is able to eliminate that cognitive dissonance. And they can do that in a few ways. I mean, cognitive dissonance, there's all sorts of ways to overcome it. Let's say the receptionist at your office has a bowl of candy and you're on a diet, right? So you're walking by this bowl of candy every day. And, if you're avoiding the candy because you're on your diet, that's great. You have no internal conflict. Say you decide to give in and you eat some candy one day. All of a sudden you've created this internal conflict. You didn't want to eat it, but you ate it anyway. Conflict. And so you do a bunch of things to get rid of this conflict. One of the things you do is you add new behaviors. So you say, okay, well, I'm going to go to the gym later and I'm going to counteract that candy. Great. So that helps reduce the conflict. And as humans, we always are just trying to reduce this cognitive dissonance inside of us. Or say that you decide that make excuses. Well, candy really isn't that bad for my diet. It's fine. I deserve candy every once in a while. And you try to justify it in that sense. And so there's all of these things that you do in order to reduce this conflict about having the candy. But the one thing that can reduce it altogether and that can make it go away is making a firm decision not to eat the candy or not eating it in the first place. And I think when you achieve spontaneous sobriety, you make that firm decision. You realize, without a doubt, and you make a commitment, a firm commitment to stopping. And when you do that, you end the conflict. You end the back and forth. You end the beating yourself up because you drank. And I realized that in this video, this is sounding incredibly simplistic. And it's not. It's not simplistic. This journey that someone needs to go through in order to achieve spontaneous sobriety, it's a massive journey because in essence you need to rewire your brain. You need to undo all of the conditioning that says that alcohol is vital to your life, and you need to come to a point where you believe that it's not vital to your life, and then you're able to make this decision. So it's not an easy process. I absolutely don't want to undermine it, but I do want to highlight the fact that more people are more successful on their own, within their own minds, achieving sobriety than with any of our traditional treatment programs, and it's not being talked about. And then, of course, shameless plug, but I want to say that my journey to spontaneous sobriety, I have documented and I've written a book about, and I, along that book, can lead you through this process, can lead you through the process of questioning your beliefs about alcohol, of really seeing alcohol as it is exposing alcohol in your life, and making alcohol small for you, and really bring you to a point where you are able to make, although I realize it seems a bit unbelievable now, but by the end of the book, you are able to make a firm decision. And you are able to make this decision, whether this decision is to drink once a month or whether it's never to drink again, you're able to make this decision in a way that helps you and ensures that you achieve internal peace. Because when you try through a traditional treatment program, you still have this massive part of you that thinks alcohol is important and thinks that you're going to be missing out if you're not drinking it. Even if that's not conscious, that's unconscious. But with this other approach of ending that cognitive dissonance, you in effect bring those beliefs around to this side to realize that, maybe the things that you've been taught about alcohol just aren't true. And so we do that through a process called liminal thinking, and it's deconstructing your beliefs and why you believe them, and just comparing them to reality, and then saying, okay, well, what's really true? And through that, you can actually shine a light into your unconscious and change your unconscious. And when you change your unconscious, you change how you feel, because your unconscious, it governs your desires. You don't consciously fall in love. You know, you don't consciously decide to wake up in a bad mood. It's your unconscious mind. It's your lifelong conditioning that has alcohol being more important to you than it should be. But anyway, it's all quite complex for a 10-minute YouTube video, but the idea of spontaneous sobriety, it should be talked about. And if you want more on this, please read the book. It's a great book. This Naked Mind, Alcohol Exposed. Thanks.